Ladies and gentlemen, a real pleasure to be here up in Lowestoft once again, and of course even more of a pleasure for you all to be here. I'll just get the team on my right to introduce themselves, starting with Douglas, our Chief Constable.
Yes, good evening, and Douglas Paxton. I am indeed the Chief Constable.
I'm Paul Sharp. I'm the Policing Commander for Waveney and Suffolk Coastal.
Richard Hill, Local Policing Commander for North Lowestoft. And Inspector Nick Aiken, Local Policing Commander for Beccles, Grundy, Dalesford and Sackwell.
Good. Thanks very much, guys. So the format this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is a few slides here that we'll run through very quickly about the role and a local context for crime patterns and what's going on. And then it's very much over to you to ask any questions you like, curveball, bouncers, whatever you like, and we'll do our very best to answer them. There will be some microphones. Well, they won't be walking around themselves, obviously, but they'll be being brought around. And afterwards, please feel free to pick up any leaflets, information from the guys over there or on the desk there. We are all here to help. So, as I say, any questions you like is very, very important. Now, where have I got to point this thing to? There we go, it works. Right, so straight into this. We often start off with a slide like this. I still am a great fan of Winston Churchill, but the reason we put that up there is that policing is about doing things together. And that is very, very important. As we move forwards, times are challenging, be it financially, whatever we look at. The fact is, if we help each other and work together across the public sector, the voluntary sector, citizens, residents, businesses, it's very, very important that we actually do that and we can be successful. Very quickly, the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner, having been elected in November 2012, some major changes from the old police authority, which we did replace, or I replaced, I suppose, rather than we. It's there to represent the public interest in Suffolk, a new way of approaching it, looking at what you, the residents, the businesses in Suffolk need, right down to the locality, rather than having one size fits all. That is a major change, and I think you will be in the position, if not already, after this evening, you can actually ask the questions you need that are of greatest concern to you here. Fairly obvious to me, as we drive towards a more localist agenda, that we have to respond to what local people need and want. And if there was a lesson from the Scottish referendum, I think that is being stated in lorry loads. We've got to have a different system where local people have more direct influence, and that certainly is one thing we can do with police and crime commissioners. Pretty obvious we need to make sure local policing needs are met, and that is there, as it says later on, holding the Chief Constable to account, but in a constructive way, with a budget of £124 million of yours and my money. What are we doing with that resources? What are Douglas and I, the constabulary, collectively doing to make Suffolk a safer place? So with that, it's setting the strategic direction. How do we see things developing over the next 5, perhaps 10 years and so on? What are the priorities? The priorities here are not going to be the same as in Merseyside or London, or, for example, in the middle of Northamptonshire. We can customise it to what we need here. The Police and Crime Commissioner is overall accountable for the budget, so I would almost say, well, it's all my fault one way or the other, which I'm sure Douglas would be pleased to hear. But in reality, of course, you delegate functions to the constabulary to carry out their day-to-day needs, and that's very important. Being in charge of the precept on behalf of the taxpayer, it is actually up to me as an individual to set the precept. It has been frozen for the last 2 years, and we look at each year on an annual basis. What is the best way forward, looking at all the demands and so on, and what is best value for money for the taxpayer. I do think we need to recognise that we cannot in this country, in my opinion, keep on sticking taxes up and up and up. There are a lot of people are hurting. Equally, we need to balance that with maintaining good, sound public services. So we need to be efficient, and there's an awful lot of work being done on that at the moment. Working with partners, I mentioned that at the beginning. This isn't a job the police can do or should do entirely on their own. Robert Peel said all those years ago, the public are the police and the police are the public. We all have a responsibility as citizens here in Suffolk or Lowestoft or Waveney to help each other, to report crime, and then of course it's up to the constabulary to respond. And one of my key roles is to try and make sure that the constabulary have the resources and capabilities in order to fulfil that role and keep us safe. The Police and Crime Plan is a 4-year document that has been published and started back in April 2013. It lasts for 4 years. That is, if you like, the aid memoir for the constabulary, joined up between them and ourselves, looking at things that are of importance here to us in Suffolk. Key things that we look for are dealing with things like domestic abuse, serious sexual offences, business crime. Very, very important we respond to that without a doubt. The objectives, responding to emergencies, pretty obvious. Solving crime. It would be wonderful to be in a world where there was no crime and those that did occur, for example, they were all solved. Well, that's a utopian situation, that's not realistic, but what is really good to report is that still in Suffolk, 92% of people feel safe, and it's also true that our solving rate is continuing to improve. Now that's very good, and Suffolk does have the reputation of being a very effective, low-cost force. We are very lucky in Suffolk. It is a low-crime area. It's a beautiful county. It's a beautiful district up here in Waveney, and we need to keep it that way. And that's a responsibility for all of us in a leadership position to do that. Preventing and reducing crime, of course, if you could reduce demand in the first place, that makes the job a lot better. And there's a lot of things that we do collectively through community grants, working with local authorities, mental health, etc., in order to try and keep the lid on that. And at the bottom there, caring for victims and vulnerable people. Well, at last, I do think that victims are at the centre stage of what is being done. It doesn't mean we get it right all the time, but in the last couple of years there has been much more focus on the plight of victims and what we do collectively as a society to look after them. And of course, in a decent, tolerant, liberal society, we've got to care for vulnerable people, be they disabled or whatever it happens to be, we must do that. Key role for police and crime commissioners is to consult with the public, and that is really, really important. That consultation is not just a token tick box exercise. I feel very passionate about that. And just to compare the record, the last year of the police authority had about 50 letters stroke emails on certain aspects. First year after we were in post, over 1,000 emails and letters. A whole raft of ways that we can be contacted and engagement, like meetings here. The Chief and I had on tour. We had loads of people visited us when we were in Lowestoft outside the Britain Centre back in July. Just come along during the middle of the day and ask whatever you like. That's really, really helpful. If you want to discuss a matter in confidence, you can have a private surgery down at Martlesham for a half hour, 45-minute slot. They are there. They can be booked by contacting the office, obviously by email. And then we've taken views, for example, on business crime. The results are published with our quarterly business liaison meeting. The speeding, we had over 2,000 responses to that. And I think it's fair to say that is an excellent example of where the constabulary and ourselves have worked together to change the pattern of enforcement throughout the county. That doesn't mean we're there on every single street corner or outside every single school, but it has made a difference of emphasis that there is much more being done on that basis than it was before. We know there's a long way to go, but it is a major start. The consultation about the control room, the overwhelming response of people that were consulting, that 75% or more wanted to keep the control room in Suffolk. And that we have done. And now we move on to look at where we're going. Now, I don't think that would have happened. In fact, I'm almost sure it wouldn't have happened without public support for that. These regular meetings, we have one in every single district and borough right across Suffolk. Every part of Suffolk, to me personally, being Suffolk born and bred, is of equal importance. Lowestoft is our second biggest town, and I hope you will agree we do what we can to make sure Lowestoft is very much on the map. It is not to be forgotten just because it's up in the northeast any more than Haverhill down in the southwest. Okay, Lowestoft is a really important area, and the Waveney district as a whole. I've talked about business meetings and how safe people feel. Might not be able to see that, but that's just a breakdown in the last 8 months, up to the end of August, of the sort of issues that we get asked about. So policy and procedures, roads policing, antisocial behaviour, road user behaviour in every district is quite a big issue. That may be that people are concerned about traffic speeding. That would all be included in that. Parking, of course, always comes up wherever we are, and no doubt that will come up tonight. But that gives a breakdown of what people's concerns are in each district. Actions in 13-14, Operation Galileo. We put extra resources into getting rural policing units. This is dealing with hair coursing. Those of you who may not be aware, people who conduct hair coursing, 99% of them have got a previous criminal record. They're pretty damned unsavoury, unpleasant people. We don't want them in Suffolk. And again, getting the constabulary geared up to keep these vagabonds out is really worthwhile, and it has been a great success in the last year. Huge success, which Douglas will no doubt talk about. Mentioned the rural crime teams. I don't think that would have happened without PCCs being here in Suffolk, because Suffolk is a big rural county, and it seems pretty obvious to me we need to try and gear resources to meet that demand. Recognising in the police and crime plan the economy is really important. Without jobs, prosperity and hope, how are we going to get our youngsters and everybody moving forwards and helping to reduce crime? One of the problems that businesses have is economic crime, so we need to be up there to safeguard the reputation of Suffolk as being a good place, and so that's why the economic crime unit has been expanded. Might not be quite so important up here, but the A14 summit is important for Suffolk as a whole. We are getting now speed limits will be coming because of direct intervention with the Highways Agency to make that road safer. It gums the whole area up, and it does have implications, I suppose, up here, because if you're heading north from the A12 off the A14 and that's chock-a-block, you can be even longer getting up here, which is not really what you want. We have put extra investment into additional specific police officers for a 2-year period. Police cadets program, really pleasing to see them here looking so smart. I know they've had a long established unit up here, but that's now being rolled out across the whole of the county to give our youngsters an opportunity to get involved. Really important, that. Special constabulary, wonderful volunteers, really good in Suffolk, this voluntary aspect of it, but using specials for other areas that they happen to be skilled in. Looking, for example, at some of the professional services where they can give advice and help, dealing with ICT, for example, or economic crime and so on. Key areas of research, which results will be published later on this year, into this cursing society of domestic abuse. It's an intolerable situation for many of the victims, but what we've got to do is find out what are the problems, what are the barriers, how does the whole of the criminal justice system work, or dare I say it, not work. And then when we've got that evidence, we can take that forward. I can do that on your behalf to hold other areas to account. And business crime surveys again on what are the priorities, how do people feel about the police response, and that will help us together to move forwards with what we're doing. And then each month we have a priority. This month, for example, is serious sexual offences. A couple of months ago it was the marine economy, and we try to customise it for what we need in different parts of the county. And then just quickly moving ahead, the Community Safety Fund, £700,000 of your money. It's not my money, it's not me being generous, I only hold it on your behalf. Supporting young people, Positive Futures, the Prince's Trust. Neighbourhood Watch is a really important voluntary organisation. Would love to see that expanded even further, very, very important. Putting extra money into Community Speed Watch. Other more serious issues dealing with Suffolk rape crisis and so on. Too many victims don't have the confidence to report it, and we're doing what we can to try and improving that. Dealing with drugs and so on, the Youth Offending Trials Service. So there is a carrot and stick there for offenders, those caught taking drugs. We'll get yourself cleaned up, we'll give you help to do that, but you've got to be committed to that rather than perhaps receiving a caution or even a custodial sentence. So we are trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, but they've got to respond to that. I don't believe in giving people a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th chance. We've had too much of that. Second chance, of course, but let's be sensible. Town pastors, a network across Suffolk that really helps with the nighttime economy. I think that's absolutely vital. And then what we have done is working with the Suffolk Foundation this year. £300,000 has actually been given to the Suffolk Foundation to administer on our behalf to try and make sure things are tied up and we don't get duplication, and it is better value for money for the taxpayer. And looking ahead, collaboration is really, really important, and it isn't just about Norfolk. We've got the Eastern Regional Serious Special Operations Unit, I should say. That is 6 county constabularies joined together. I've been very impressed with the resources I've seen up there. We were down there last week. And that's the way to deal with serious and organised crime. It doesn't respect borders, but what it will enable us to do is to make sure that our local policing, if you like, is sacrosanct. That is the bedrock of police, and they were all saying that at the meeting. We must keep that county policing, and as far as I'm concerned, and I know Douglas thinks the same, neither of us would be here unless we fundamentally agree with that. I don't agree with big merged police forces. We're already doing that cooperation and collaboration where it's appropriate. But if you lose that community bond for policing, I think we will all suffer. Reviewing the constabulary spend, there's a whole raft of projects as we try to meet that financial challenge, which we'll be doing. We'll be making announcements on that next month. And then on the 1st of October, Police and Crime Commissioners take over victims commissioning. Very, very pleased with the extra money we've got from the Ministry of Justice, from what was called the Competed Fund. That helps a lot of organisations on a short-term basis to deal with the victims of domestic abuse, sexual abuse, children who have been the victims and so on. And we have to try and start putting that right. So that's a very quick run through. Please ask whatever questions you like later, and I will now hand over to Douglas.
Thank you, Tim. I'll just check, is that microphone projecting? Yes, yeah, people at the back saying yes. Tim always speaks with great passion about the county, and I absolutely share that. As you point out, I was only cultivating this Scottish accent to go over the border to see the Ryder Cup later this week, and all that effort has just gone to waste. I shall be reverting back to my Suffolk accent. I joined Suffolk Police in 1989, spent 12 or 13 years here, and then left to work in the Midlands for about 10 years, and was absolutely privileged to come back down to be the Chief Constable. I've only got one slide, somebody can nudge up, thank you, Tim. One slide to go through with you, because I know really you want to hear from your local policing commanders, and they'll have the most up-to-date information for you. A few things I want to cover. The first one is about the policing crime plan. That's the document that Tim consulted upon just before my arrival, and sets out the priorities, and they are largely the things that we respond to. In my view, having been in policing for about 26 years, this is about the closest that I think a document has brought us to the communities. Two big things have happened differently, in my view. One is business crime, much bigger commitment now for the constabulary, and the second one is rural crime. Things that in the past we might just have glossed over are now front and centre. If you want the evidence of that, speak to people about the thing that Tim mentioned, hair coursing. If it's a hair coursing incident, it gets a visit. Every single location gets a visit, and we've driven down the amount of hair coursing by over 30% in the county. That's things happening differently because of an engagement with communities. Overall, pretty good news. We are one of 11 counties where crime continues to fall, but a 7% reduction last year. Big drops in some things that really worry people, burglary dwelling, in particular, 25% reduction in burglary dwelling. Satisfaction higher than it's been in recent years, 88% of people satisfied or very satisfied having called us, and the attendance rate's extremely good. You know, we're not talking about a thin blue line. You call us, we're getting there in the times that you need. Things are shifting, however. A colleague will probably want a question about that, but we'll come back to that. Things are shifting, however. The pattern of offending and the pattern of victimisation, moving away from things like robbery, vehicle crime, house break-ins, much more towards fraud and social media. If you do nothing else tonight, can I ask you to just visit that desk with a couple of colleagues there before you leave and just pick up a leaflet that gives you some really good information on protecting your home. There's also one if you're involved in business, and there's a brand new one involved for marine crime. You can do some fairly straightforward things to make yourself much safer. No more so than on the internet, which is where most people are now vulnerable. This county is quite low for the level of offending, but it's high for the level of victims. It's people outside Suffolk targeting people inside Suffolk. Identity theft is the thing you have got to guard against. Take the booklet. If you're on the internet, log on to Action Fraud. Very straightforward steps you can take. I really encourage you to do that. Tackling vulnerability on a broader level is our growing basket of business. Whether it be child sexual exploitation, whether it be child abuse, whether it be the abuse of elders, people are now coming forward to talk about this. It doesn't mean there's more necessarily offending as it relates to particularly sexual offences, because some people are now coming forward telling us things that happened a decade ago, 2 decades ago. But there are things we have got to deal with. It leads us to be much more involved in things like mental health. For our frontline colleagues, probably around about 20-25% of their business is people coming forward suffering from mental health. They either look like they're offending or they look like they're victims. But the real issue is mental health that we're now trying to work with partner agencies to deal with. Flip side, for general issues, the key that I give to the organisation is that we deal with what matters to our local communities. It's why Tim and I stand in high streets, shopping centres, being available for people. We contribute that information, but really it's to say the whole organisation is doing that. But folks, I've got to get you to sell the message that says, come and tell us the things that matter to you. If you're not letting us know, it's very hard for us to address the issues which are then trends and patterns. So keep an eye out for the surgeries that are running. Where's your neighbourhood officer? Where's your neighbourhood PCSO going to be available for you as a community member? When we get that stuff, I like to think we do something genuinely different about it. Talking about driving standards there, when I first arrived, I said to Tim, I'm not particularly convinced with the way in which we deploy our speed cameras. Would you mind finding out what the public think about that? The public were loud and clear, and as a result, we've drastically changed the way in which we deploy our enforcement activities. I'm not going to say too much about collaboration. Let's not let it get a bad name. It's a genuinely good thing. It does enable us to keep as many people as we can dealing with you as community members, and sometimes it allows us to do things very, very much better. I'll give you an example. Asset recovery, very technical legislation that we use to take money off offenders, and we take millions of pounds off offenders by targeting their assets. We can only do that with CPS. CPS are finding time so hard, they can only do it with us once as a region, so we've got a very specialist team, sits at a regional level, does fantastic work. We just couldn't do it at a county level, but it's a better service. Last one for me is about future planning. The organisation will shrink. I don't fight it. Tim doesn't fight it. The budget is coming down, but we still think there are ways in which we can do things better. The key task really is about frontline services, working better with health, working better with local councils, dealing with things early, and preventing lots of crime and disorder. And that's the way in which we can shrink, but keep you safe in a county in which it's really safe to live, work, travel, and invest. I'm going to pop that onto a local level and let my colleagues speak about the picture within Lowestoft and surrounding areas.
Okay, I'll just start off. I'm Richard Hill, in charge of North Lowestoft. I'm just going to run through some of the issues that we've had and some of the performance figures around Waveney. Obviously, the big slide up there just gives you some generic numbers. If anybody wants to, I have got a breakdown of them further, so if you want to see me afterwards, I can show you what the actual numbers mean. But as the Chief has obviously said, total crime in Waveney is down by 18%, so our figures are really, really good as we're working. And in some of our key areas, we've had significant reductions in domestic burglary. The percentages of that are down 36%. We had quite a significant problem in Waveney a couple of years ago. We did a lot of work around that. We've done some proactive work, and needless to say, that's worked out really, really well. We're continuing to do some proactive work around it. We're targeting offenders, and clearly it's having a positive effect. So we're very happy with that result as well. Robbery, likewise, is down 30%, which again is a really good result for us. And violence with injury, again, down 18%. So those numbers are good. With regards to antisocial behaviour, those number of incidents have reduced by 29%, which I think is, again, a very good result, but it's also on the back of people being more free to come and speak to us, which obviously has a knock-on effect on that as well. And with regards to that, those increases, the decreases in the number of offences that we're getting, in contrast to that, we're actually improving the solve rates that we've got as well. So again, in relation to domestic burglary, the solve rate with regards to that is actually up 13%. Robbery is up 16%, and drug trafficking, as it says in there, is up 30%. So overall, figures are really, really good. And if I just move on to the next slide, which is regards to the local issues, I'll talk about the stuff which we've done in Lowestoft. I came to Lowestoft last November. One of the issues which was identified by myself and had been issued for the last probably 18 months before that was the problems that we had around street drinkers and antisocial behaviour around the town centre. Obviously, I was just mindful that's having a knock-on effect not only on those people themselves, but also the businesses, the local community around there, and people wanting to come into Lowestoft. So we started targeting that, and again, I'll talk about some of the good work that we've done with regards to that in a minute. Safe on the river, one of the issues that we've got at the moment is theft and criminal damages to beach huts. The inspector for South Lowestoft is Nigel Barton, but he couldn't be here today. But again, we're putting additional patrols in and extra work with regards to that, and we are actively trying to tackle some of the problems we've got around there. Just bring 2 seconds, because I'll pass you over to Mr. Aiken.
And so for Beccles and Bungay, just to give you a flavour of what we've been prioritising over the summer, dealing with illegal and inconsiderate parking in town centres. I know that's an issue that's regularly raised for us. Specifically, that was raised for Bungay with the new one-way system that's come into force. Everyone was getting used to that. We worked with the town council as well. Now, we didn't go straight into some enforcement. The town council helped by issuing some notices to people, made sure people knew where they should be parking. And then the enforcement followed that once everyone knew what was going on, just to help that one. Now the next one, that was raised at the priority meeting at the beginning of summer, which talked about the skate parks, and that was more of a historical problem. Actually, although we had it as a priority, we didn't have a huge problem. That was almost a predicted priority where people felt through the summer holidays we were going to have an issue. Actually, through the summer holidays we haven't had an issue. Most young people, as you appreciate, are law-abiding, decent, and we haven't really had that problem, which is great for us. The third one, which is a real work in progress still, was reducing marine crime and reducing thefts from boats, etc., and promoting Boat Shield, which is a new initiative, a new crime reduction initiative, which has been started by the local Safe Neighbourhood team in Beccles and Bungay, together with Alan Keeley and Nick Ray, who are sitting over there. That's their really hard work to get the scheme up and running. The scheme is basically all about educating boat owners about the simple and sometimes very cheap steps that they can take to make their property much harder to steal and reducing the amount of crime. That's in tandem with a partnership with the harbour masters and other local businesses. So there's various points that people can go to get the information as well as just the local team. I'll just encourage anyone here that is a boatman, so I can definitely speak to myself or Alan or Nick if you've got all the material and all the information you might need. And I've got a rainbow on the screen now. No, well, the next bit is quite easy. It's Southall and Halesworth. Remind us of, I can't remember these, but I will have a quick look. Speeding on the A12 at Rentham got raised as a priority. Most people are probably familiar with Rentham, most people are familiar with the 30 miles an hour limit. And as we've said, we look carefully about speeding. We don't just rush into enforcement. So we've done work there with the local team surveying the speed measures. We've also worked with Suffolk County Council to actually get an idea of what the speeding problem is, and that's something we're now looking to enforce with our camera van. So you'll see the camera van there on the A12 at Rentham. But that's something we don't do in a sneaky, beaky way, because we know people don't like that, that can upset people. That sort of information is on our website as to where that van's going to be. But that will certainly help. And the other part of Rentham, which was mentioned, was Southwold Road in Rentham, which has been a little bit of a rat run, and that's another area that actually we're taking some enforcement in. We've had some quite high speeds recorded there. The other one was antisocial behaviour at Halesworth Skate Park, similar to Beccles and Bungay. Same sort of issue that people felt might be a problem. There was a history with the town park in Halesworth having problems with drug use. We dealt with that a few years ago and had some injunctions against certain individuals to keep them at the town park. And again, thankfully, that one's not really its head, but it's been an opportunity for the local team to get down to the skate park and talk to the young people. And that's where we are with that one. And it's back over to Richard to talk about work in Lowestoft.
Okay, just flipping back quickly to the problems that I said we identified through the priority set meeting around some of the antisocial behaviour, the Class A drug problem, street drinking that we had in the town centre. One of the things which we introduced in March 2014, obviously you would see on each slide if you can't in a minute, was the Reduce the Strength campaign. Reduce the Strength, for those who don't know, is a campaign where local off-licences voluntarily agree to stop selling high-strength alcohol, such as cheap beer, cheap cider, which is primarily the drink of choice for obviously your street drinkers. In addition to that, we didn't just sort of, take away their source. We also worked with those street drinkers with regards to giving them support and offering them accommodation and trying to work out the reasons why they are on the street. We also increased patrols around the town centre. We looked at the staffing levels and the shifts and the way that people were working and tried to implement basically a period where we could have as many officers into that town centre, so we had a high visibility. We were engaging with those street drinkers, but also we were engaging with the public over a short period. Glad to say that had quite a positive effect. We also looked at a couple of addresses in North Lowestoft which were linked to the drug supply and use of Class A drugs. And over the last couple of months we actually engaged in 2 closure orders and got those places closed down, which again was probably a first in Waveney and it's quite a good result for us. Now, as a result of all that work, I'm pleased to say that when I took over in November, through CSI and a couple of the drugs and alcohol work agencies that we got there, we had 30 registered drinkers that were coming with us at the time, that were hanging around that town centre. That's actually dropped down to 4 that we've got regularly at the moment. I'm not going to promise you that if you go down the town, you're not going to see somebody with a can of beer, because clearly there are still people around, but the number of people that are regularly dropping down there has gone from 30 to 4, so obviously that problem has dramatically dropped. In addition to that, we had a couple of persistent beggars that were working in the town centre. They were working up and down the seafront, and we managed to obtain ASBO orders on those not to beg in all England and Wales. They subsequently breached those ASBOs, received custodial sentences, came out with the same thing again, breached it again, went back in, and they've now decided that Lowestoft's not for them, it's too hard a place to do their work, so they've decided to go elsewhere, which for me is a bonus. And likewise, I've got a couple of prolific street drinkers that have been in various towns, not just in Suffolk, but throughout the county, that have caused problems that we've managed to obtain ASBO orders on, that again have decided that Lowestoft's not the place for them because we're taking active enforcement. So that, for me, is quite a good thing. A lot of them that have received help, needed help, and they've moved on, but the ones that needed targeting have been targeted as well. So I'm pleased with that. We've also begun to work with some licensed premises. There are 1 or 2 premises in Lowestoft that perhaps haven't been working in the best of their ability. We've sent officers in to offer them advice. We've got a licensing team that also go in and do sporadic checks and speak to those licensees, premises supervisors, and offer them advice as to the way that they should be working. If they don't pull their weight and they don't make the improvements that we like, then we look at reviewing their licence, and we've got a couple of those that are going through at the moment. So everything around alcohol and antisocial behaviour we are working on at the moment. In relation to South Lowestoft as well, one of the things which they're working on at the moment is a shop watch scheme, and likewise we're looking at trying to implement something similar to that in the town centre, and another scheme which is similar to what Nick's run out in the Beggars area, which is like a security measure where we can do a security audit with those businesses and look at ways they can improve their own premises. So, over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Okay, so quick flavour. That's fine. I mean, you can also scroll down on the left-hand side there Just click on 16 when I've finished this one. Oh, we're not at the end quite yet. Beccles and Bungay. I'll start talking about some of the work in Beccles and Bungay. Launch of the boat shield is a scheme I've just mentioned. There's probably not much extra to say on that one. Partnership working with the Broads Authority, that's also some of Richard's work. That is using our special constabulary to joint patrol, that is our hope, that's what we'd like to do with the Broads Authority. So we're putting police officers with the Broads Authority patrols through the Broads to reduce crime and tackle the sort of antisocial behaviour that happens sometimes on the waterways, and we want to make sure that the waterways are going to still be a beautiful place for people to enjoy. That's something we're taking forward. Bungay Shop Watch Scheme, we've got a Shop Watch Scheme that's active and well established in the Beccles area. That really, a Shop Watch Scheme is about the local police officers working with the shop owners and the shopkeepers who all operate normally a ban from one and a ban from all type scheme. So if somebody is dealt with for stealing from a shop, they're banned from the whole scheme. That's a deterrent to people, we hope. That's what we're doing in Bungay, just extending that scheme across there. Southwold and Halesworth, we have a checked out security scheme, as we've called it, for local businesses. That came to our attention that we had 1 or 2 burglaries in the Southwold area, and we wanted to make sure all the shopkeepers and the businesses upped their security as a result. So we went round to all the shops and had a very simple scheme which we called checked out, and it was a case of us talking through with the owners about the type of security that they have, whether they've got alarm, CCTV, shutters over the windows if they're keeping valuable display on their displays. Very basic things really, but it was surprising that not all shopkeepers realised that they needed to do these things. And once people have done all those points that we've asked them to do, they display a poster that proves that they're checked out. And that's worked really well. And then the last thing is Mites Bridge and some CCTV in Southwold, and that was a scheme where we looked again, linking in with actually some marine crime in the Southwold area and some of the business crime. We felt that a CCTV camera would be useful on Mites Bridge because that's the main vehicle way in and out of Southwold. So we sought some funding, and kindly the PCC's office funded, I think, the bulk of that, together with the Town Council and Waveney Council helping us. And we do now have a CCTV camera on Mites Bridge, which will help us in the future. The next slide, I think that's the end, isn't it? Thank you.
Right, well thanks, and that last one obviously a very good example of where together we can work to greater public good. Just before we go over to you, ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to welcome Waveney MP Peter Aldous, and of course the Chairman of Waveney District Council. I know there are other councillors in here, but it would take me too long to mention you all by name, but you're all very welcome. So now it's over to you. Please ask any question you like. There are some microphones wandering around. Peter, and then up the lady at the front here.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. That was, are we on? Yeah. Very, very interesting. Thank you, Tim. I've worked with and alongside the police for a number of years in various ways, and over the last probably 7 or 8, 9 years. And I have to say, I have a great deal of respect and a great deal of admiration for our constabulary. I think they do a superb job, and they don't always get the respect that I think they deserve. But, and I think there is always a but, and this is one of the things I've been, had a hobby horse for many, many years now, and that is, and I think a lot of people will agree with me, is cycling and cars in London Road North. And it's something that I've talked to various people, I've had discussions, and I've got absolutely nowhere. This very afternoon I had the cause to walk from the town hall down to Barclays Bank, and on my journey from one end to the other and back again I counted 14 cyclists, and that was way, way before the 4 o'clock limit. Now, there appears to be, as far as I can tell, nobody actually patrolling up and down the street there. I've also seen on a number of occasions cars parked, shall I say, opposite Beals or just past there, and there was 2 cars there this afternoon. Now I know probably about a week ago there was a car parked outside an estate agent's, and it was there for over 2 hours. I understand that the police actually spoke to the driver, and as far as I could see, he turned round virtually and said, "Up you, I'm going to stay here." And it was for 2 hours. I saw it there for 2 hours at least, and nothing has been done. Now, I know this can be a problem associated with Suffolk County Council as well, because the signage, so I understand, is not up to standard. Now, I'm asking now, as Chairman of Waveney District Council, and with our Suffolk County Council colleagues here tonight, what can we actually do about this? I mean, the cycling between 10 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the afternoon is, as far as I understand, illegal. Now, why aren't we enforcing the law? If we decide that it's not necessary to do that, right, let's scrap it, do away with it. Let everybody cycle or walk or drive up there, whichever they want. If we're going to have that law, then let's enforce it. So please, I'm asking now, what can we do about it? Because it's one of the things that I get more probably emails and correspondence about than just about anything else in Lowestoft.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter. Just to let you know, this came up when we were on our roadshow in July, actually in the pedestrianised area, and I could not believe the number of people whizzing around on bicycles. Obviously it's dangerous, you've got be it young children, disabled people, elderly people, whatever. It's not acceptable. You're quite right about the signage, that needs to be much clearer, and I think that's something we need to take forward collectively. I should make clear, ladies and gentlemen, I don't interfere in the operational side of policing. That's quite rightly left to the discretion of Douglas and his team, but it is important we get this balance right, and I can hold the Conservative to account for that. So which one of you, are you going to deal with that, Paul, or? Yeah? Okay, so here comes the answer of what will be done. And we'll all be right behind it.
Yeah, I'm Paul Sharp, I'm the Superintendent for Waveney and Suffolk Coastal. We have looked at this problem previously. I think there is a real need to sort out the signage and make it clear. I think there's a real issue around the educational side of things, making it clear to people what is and what isn't acceptable. I think there's work for us to do from a safe neighbourhood team perspective in relation to providing controls in that area and taking appropriate action. I do know in the past that we have spoken to individuals on cycles from a verbal perspective, and that needs to obviously continue. We need to strike the right balance in terms of what's happening down there. I do think it is clearly the signage element is something that would really help. But if there's enough feeling about it, we want to adopt it, for example, as a priority for the Lowestoft North Safer Neighbourhood team, then we can do that. But certainly visibility in the town centre and London Road North in particular is really important, as Inspector Hill has previously outlined. We've worked hard to try and make sure that we've got the right level of visibility from a policing perspective in the town centre at key times when people are about. And yes, we do recognise that it is an issue. So you've got my pledge there that we will take that forward.
I mean, just to add my bit to that, this has been brought up before about cycling in the high street, and for those that don't know it, there's a sign at each end that basically says no vehicles. A lot of the public won't interpret that to mean you can't cycle. They'll think that means that a car or a lorry obviously can't go down that high street. Now we have, I mean, I'd be pretty disappointed if a PCC or a PC was walking down that high street and somebody went right past them and they didn't say anything. I'd want to have a word with that PC. So I don't think that's going to happen. But likewise, as I've raised, I am doing some work around trying to raise the amount of police officers that we've got in that town centre, and I've got some other work ongoing where I'm trying to facilitate that on a more permanent basis. So Pete, you are quite right. I haven't got somebody down there 9 to 5 every single day, because obviously we have other commitments that we have to go to. If that was raised as a cycling was raised as a priority, obviously we would put more resources towards that. I think probably prior to that happening, in fairness for those that are obviously cycling to that high street, or not, it's important that they understand what they can and can't do as well. So I think we've raised this before on a couple of occasions where we've said, let's get the signage sorted out, let's get people so that they can clearly understand what they can and can't do. Then if they breach that, we've got officers down there that are telling people, you actually can't do this, the site plans clearly say you can't do this, and they continue, well then fine, we can, as you said, fine them if needs be, we can give them a verbal warning, we can take some action against it, but I think probably the first thing we should do is make sure that signage is right. I think that's fair to the people that are biking through there themselves. Because I don't think it's overly clear. I mean, I think your opinion is on the signage as well, but yeah, I don't think it's great.
Can I just ask,
Yeah,
what's the penalty if you're caught cycling down there in the restricted hours?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but we work off like fixed penalty notices which come under the Road Traffic Act. If I had to, I'd be guessing, I think it's probably something like a 40 quid fine, 30 quid fine, yeah. But more importantly than that, as you've rightly said, that isn't going to endear us to the public standing there giving 40 or 14 people in an hour tickets, especially when the road signage isn't very clear. So I think for us to go down there and suddenly start sticking on every man, woman and child that comes through on a bike isn't going to go down well at all. I think it's probably a little disproportionate given what's happened. A better way, in my opinion, of doing it would be to improve the signage, perhaps do some press coverage, perhaps do a release to say, look, this is what's happened. We have improved the signage, you cannot bike down there. This is the reasons why the Road Traffic Act says X, Y, Z. Anybody caught out there will be a period where we start enforcing it. Would be a better way, and a fairer way to do it. Because that road did used to be...
Do we need to improve the signage?
Yeah, I think the first key is improve the signage. Once we've improved the signage, I would like then to do some sort of press release that tells people what they can and what they can't do, and then over that we'll go for enforcement. I think just jumping in with enforcement before we've made any improvements is unfair.
Yeah, I just sort of applaud the Chairman's call for clarity here. Of the two public events that Tim and I have done this year, the times that I spent most time enforcing rather than just engaging with the public was London Road North and the thoroughfare in Woodbridge, where there just isn't enough clarity in either area. And it does present colleagues with some real difficulties. In Ipswich, you can cycle up and down that main high street. If you look at Woodbridge, you can take a delivery vehicle down the thoroughfare between 10 AM and 4 PM. If you're a permit holder, you can take your private car down that thoroughfare. What happens is people watch a car going down there and think, well, it's all right for them, it must be fine for me. They're not a permit holder, but they're forming an opinion. So I think here there's got to be absolute clarity. From my perspective, I think one of the things that was confusing the situation on London Road North is that businesses are abusing that to have deliveries between the restricted hours. So I think if you do go for an absolute rule, it has to be clear to businesses they're going to have to schedule their deliveries outside of those times. If they don't, then their delivery companies are going to get the fine. And I think we all have to sign up to that and say that's the right thing to do. Or we say, no, indeed, businesses need to operate in an environment where they can have flexibility, and in which case that's part of the confusion it will cause.
Just to add to that, Peter, make sure that we write, making sure that we get the signage put right, and we'll publish when that's going to be done, because we can't be fiddling about discussing this for the next 5 years. So it's a joint effort, and we'll take that forward, and that will be done. I promise you that. Now, there's a lady here that wanted a question.
The neighbourhood watch outside, like a cheeseman on the fairway on the fairway in Lowestoft. About 5-6 weeks ago, a gentleman next door to us had a cold call. 6,000 for your roof to be repaired, the usual scenario. And he says, I've sent them away though. I says, have you reported it? No, I've sent them away. I says, that's not the point, you've got your 101 number. So we got our PCSO out, Lloyds and Hanno, here, to speak to us, much information. Now I've written to them all in the room, and saying, you don't just ignore it, someone could get caught. Is there anything else I should be doing as the coordinator? or have I done more or less all I can do?
Right, well, we obviously need these things reported, and that's, we've got to encourage people to report suspicious circumstances and crime, whatever the situation, because otherwise I don't think you guys can do much about it.
No, I agree, and one of the things that we've done in recent years is to collocate our people with training standards, because training standards also want to find these people who are engaging in that sort of conduct. Can also ask people to be aware of something else, which is people purporting to be under a rehabilitation scheme. They sometimes say they're working with probation, they're ex-prisoners. Probation in Suffolk run no such scheme. Those people are on a scam, you must say no to them, and you must report it to 101 or to training standards. What they'll typically say is, knock, 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 I was convicted of grievous bodily harm. You're immediately going, oh my goodness, what's this person going to do? And then they look to sell goods to you for an inflated price. There is no charitable nature to that activity whatsoever. It is a scam here in Suffolk, and please do report it. But it can be quite common in our communities.
Okay, thank you. Lady at the end here, and move to the next lady.
I'm really impressed that you're trying to deal with sexual abuse, the results. As a result of my childhood sexual abuse and emotional abuse, I thought that all I deserved was to be abused the whole of my life until 7 years ago. I attracted people to abuse me emotionally, physically and sexually. It was only 7 years ago that I accessed different techniques to help me that I am so much better and can deal with, life much better. But it is only today that I have given evidence to my doctor about the people who were controlling me in the past and influencing my treatment on the NHS with authority, and hopefully now I can feel safe. Because when somebody controls you and you think that's all you deserve, you just accept it. But now, after 7 years of going into all my, traumas, I'm able to stand up to them. And I'm really impressed. I reported my ex-husband to the police in 1997 in Essex. I refused to write a statement because I was concerned about him becoming homeless. It was only just over 5 years ago that two people said to me independently, therapists, you put everybody before yourself all your life. It's about time you put yourself first. And those people I put before myself all my life haven't liked it, that I am now independent and putting myself first. We were all codependent. But I'm at the stage now of being able to, because of all these techniques, forgive the original perpetrator, my sister. But she died just over 41 years ago. But I'm having to clear up the rest of the attraction of abuse.
Thank you very much for sharing those details with us. It's very brave to do that. Just before I hand over to the operational side, I just want to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, this is something we as a team take extremely seriously. I've had a very protected life. I've never seen, witnessed or experienced it, so I'm not here to give lectures about it. But I have seen enough in the last 18 months to find some of these offences deeply, deeply disturbing. And we have to do what we can in a society, A, to confront these issues, and then to deal with them going forward, break this cycle of behaviour and support the victims. And it is really, really pleasing that actually in the last 2 or 3 months we have secured some funding to support those victims going back many, many years. I was horrified to see some of these statistics when we were on a visit in Ipswich the other day, last week in fact. The prevalence of serious child sexual abuse. It is in no way ever acceptable. So we have to confront this going forward. It is a top priority of ours in the police and crime plan. Douglas and I, everybody's united about this. There is no question. At last, I do think these things are starting to be tackled in society. There is a long way to go, and I would appeal to all of you. We all have a shared collective responsibility to confront and try and deal with it. However painful it may be, that is something we have to do in a decent society. And if we break that cycle, hopefully, we can start to move forwards. And I've seen the effect on children has been devastating. And that was one of the reasons we're very pleased to support the Waveney Domestic Violence Forum up here when Baroness Newlove came over. So Douglas, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Say the non-metropolitan list, my colleagues.
But thank you very much for raising that. It is something we really take seriously, I can assure you. And it will remain at the top of the list as long as I've got anything to do with it. So who'd like to go next? I think there was a lady here, and then we'll move over to Peter, this gentleman, then Peter. Okay.
This is Mary Small. When I was with many years ago, when I had a bike, the first thing I had put on my bike was a bell. And I always thought it was law that you have to have a bell on your bike. As I've got older, when I'm walking along the street, I find it very difficult to hear people behind me. Most bikes now don't have a bell or mobility scooter. I was in the park one day and got talking to a community officer, and I said, "Excuse me, but where's your bell?" "Oh, I don't have to have one," he said. "I've got one on my bike at home." Is it not law that people have to have bells on their bike?
I don't know. Does anybody? I don't know the answer to that. That's a good point there. We'll have to find out. If you give us some details, I actually don't know that. But thank you very much. Bill, do you know the answer to that? Driving instructor.
It is a requirement.
Yeah.
And I believe that all new bicycles sold for the last year or two, they will actually come with bells now.
Okay.
And they sell them new.
Right.
I don't know about the electric scooters.
No, that's all right. We'll go to this gentleman, and then we'll go over to Peter Wills.
Good evening, Chief Constable, good evening, Inspectors. My name is Jim Poole, and I run the Dawn Time Coffee Shop in High Street. You may have heard me, Inspector Hill. Yes. We opened on the 17th of November 2013 and ran moderately successfully until May the 12th this year, when a former employee was evicted from the flat above, causing some £2,000 worth of damage and leaving me £1,200 shy of rent. During the eviction, a friend of hers started a campaign online using a fake name, a fake petition, and various other social media tools to label me a child abuser and state claims that indecent photographs of children were taken within my business and my family and my friends were also paedophiles. For the last 16 weeks, we have been subject to a constant campaign of abuse, intimidation and violence against members of my family, my staff and now my customers, and this has been constantly reported to the police. On occasion, officers have witnessed incidents taking place on CCTV, such as customers from the neighbouring public house coming out urinating on the shop doors in full view of the public, and then when we report this, we are told that no crime has been committed, unquote. Various other incidences have been taking place, constant abuse, not only, was it last week? Last week, a gentleman came in from the neighbouring public house, threatening to stab my colleague here, threatened my son with violence, and then threatened me on my arrival. We phoned the police, who failed to attend. Again. We were told that to deliver the CCTV footage to them the following day. You were obviously busy chasing up hair coursing, something like that. So this has been a constant. My home address was published online. Invitations to kill this, insert relevant expletive. And when this was reported to the police, we were told again that no crime was committed. On being pointed out that this was clearly a Section 1 Malicious Communications Act offence, we were advised, don't quote the law at me, sir, it is complicated, you do not understand it. And so on and so forth. It has only been recent when some notice has been taken place. We had come under armed assault one day. There were 12 members of the English Defence League left from the public house and stormed the premises. We were told to stop calling the police. Don't ring us, we were told. Could you care to explain yourself, please, Chief Constable? We also, before you do, Mr. Aldous was made aware of this on about week 3. We were promised an interview with Inspector Hill. This never materialised. It was instead translated down to a telephone call from PC 335 Stranks, of which still no action has been taken place. Now, I would like to be put into the picture on what's actually going on, because to be honest, I'm getting rather fed up. This gentleman has moved down from Newcastle, and he is enhanced CRB cleared. But because he works in my premises, he's a paedophile. He assaults children. False allegations were thrown in. A gentleman accused us of shooting the windows from his motor vehicle with a firearm. Okay. 2 witnesses saw us clear as day, but we were 200 miles away when this happened. We'd like some kind of explanation would be
No, well,
nice.
thank you for raising that. It's obviously a very serious issue. So,
Very serious.
Richard, what I think you're going to answer.
I'm obviously aware of the problems that you've had. We haven't spoken direct, no. But I am aware. I can remember I sent you a letter probably 5 or 6 weeks ago into some. Yeah. You got 2 pages back, but I can't remember exactly what I wrote to you. The first thing I would say is, obviously, with regards to you saying that no crimes have been committed, that's actually incorrect. But I've given you, as part of my letter, a list of the crime numbers that have been recorded against your premises. So it's not none then, so it's okay. But it's much more than one. I would tend to agree with you on that. And in relation to the events that happened over the last couple of weeks, they equally have been crimed, and there are crime numbers in relation to that. So I think probably the best way for us to voice this, rather than dealing with this in a public forum, is probably to speak with you direct. I'd be more than happy to meet up with you. Okay, well, yeah. Who are you suggesting has done that? Yeah, but you're not suggesting that a police officer. No, okay, right. Okay, well that's obviously a separate issue that I'd be more than happy to discuss. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Okay, I think probably the best way for it to do is, if I have a meeting with yourself, Mr. Poole, you raise with me the incidents that you've had, okay? To be honest... Okay, well what I will do is, and equally what I did last time when you sent me the letter, was I checked through the stuff which was in that letter against what crimes had been recorded and what officers had done. And I was happy at that point that everything that you'd listed was being logged and dealt with. If there is stuff over and above that we've missed, or that you're suggesting has happened since, I'd be more than happy for you to come and talk to me. Well, that's fine. If you wait... Yeah. I'm more than happy to have a meeting with you. I think we'll have a sit down, we'll have a discuss where we are. Okay, well, I'll need to look at that event individually to work out the rationale why.
Yeah, okay, well, we will take that forward, and if you want to get in touch with me, you can certainly do that anyway, all right? And for anybody, my cards are on there. This is all about accountability. Thank you for raising it. Generally speaking, we don't go into the absolute details in public because it would take all day, but I can assure you that will be noted down. Douglas has got it noted down as well, and do get in touch if you're not getting anywhere. But thank you for raising it. Peter Aldous, the MP, was next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. And generally, I would say I do have a good working relationship with the police and dialogue going one way or the other. Just 2 issues that I think are fairly high up on my radar at the moment. Firstly, antisocial behaviour in and around the north area, North Lowestoft there, and I do see real, you are making a real attempt to actually address those, and there is clear signs that you are being successful. But just a couple of issues. Firstly, there was a meeting which one of my staff attended about 10 days ago on a particular area, and one of the notes that I saw from the meeting was there is a licence application in that area. And I think if I read the notes correctly, the licensee has declined to partake in the reduced strength initiative. Is that in itself a reason for declining for turning down that particular license application in an area where there may be particular problems linked to that?
No, just to answer that one, the reduce the strength campaign that we run is actually a voluntary scheme that the existing licensees we would obviously encourage to sign up for once they're in existence. New licensed premises, we do make attempts to speak to those people and say to them, will you sign up to this scheme prior to us providing that license? However, it's not something that we can actually enforce. It is a voluntary scheme. We do obviously try as hard as we can, but again, it's not something we can put on as a strict condition that they have to do that.
The second point on antisocial behaviour is when you have a particular issue in a particular location, in a particular street, I've seen it, you have been successful in addressing that, but is there a worry that you then shift the problem from one street to another neighbourhood elsewhere in the town? And if so, what steps are you taking to actually address that?
That's always a concern. Reality says that if you've, like the street drinkers is one that I would say, we know for a fact that if they're congregating in the centre of town, if they're hanging around outside the railway station, and I go down there and I send officers in and I tell them to move them, they're going to move somewhere else. They're not suddenly going to change their lifestyle and, pick up a job perhaps and, get away from kids. They may well continue to live their life that they're living, but do it somewhere else. How do we deal with that? To be honest, it's a difficult one. Sometimes, we continue the patrols around the area where we have been policing, and then we tend to, identify who the individuals are, and we keep an eye on them. We try to track where they are, what family links they've got, who they're with, and then, as I said, with some of those street drinkers in particular, we've looked at their support network, the families and other bits and pieces they've got, and seen if there's an avenue to get them out of that lifestyle and take them off to somewhere else. Yeah, it is a concern. It is a concern. But we do our best to try and monitor it.
Thanks. My second issue relates to victim support, in particular in domestic violence and sexual abuse cases. And Tim, I know you personally, this is right at the top of your agenda. I think from a number of cases that do come across my desk, there's beginning to be a little bit of a common theme developing, in that there is the intention by the authorities to actually address the problem. But there are a number of different organisations and people involved, and so often the problem can fall between two stools and the support that is needed isn't actually given. It might be in the police station itself. There will be a particular officer who has this responsibility, and then if they're not around, when the victim calls, there isn't anyone to talk to them. Can be a problem when it's when the case may be transferred from Lowestoft down to Martlesham. There can then be problems when you get into court, in that the CPS can be unsympathetic and not really understand the torment that a victim is going through. And then also the courts themselves at times can be non-responsive. So I just flagged this up, that, as I said, it's a common theme that's coming through in a number of completely different cases with which I'm involved.
No, well, thank you for raising that, Peter. That is a very important point. Could I just say one thing before we talk about that? One of the things we do with our Community Safety Fund is to put activities together and support organisations that deal with antisocial behaviour, forgiving youngsters' activities, purposeful events. We talked about the cadets, the Prince's Trust, we've got Emma at the back there, various things that we try to do and support. It's not going to cure everything, but I do believe if we give youngsters a chance and a purpose in life, we've got to do that. Phil A, sitting at the back there, Lowestoft Rising, is a very good example of where we're trying to put things together. Forget about, I couldn't care less which organisation people belong to, put the resources in there, what is best for the community. Forget about all the other things, and that's what we've got to do. And that does lead on to this issue about looking at the whole joined-up system for those who are the victims of sexual abuse and so on. We have done a lot in the last few months for victims' services. We've got a lot of money from the Ministry of Justice. Fully accept we need to get it better configured and coordinated. We have got more resources, and that is a piece of work that's ongoing. We are boosting hugely the number of the independent domestic advisors, domestic abuse advisors we've got, and the court-based advisory service, which has frankly been woefully lacking for many years here in Suffolk. That is going to be increased by a huge amount. And we also need to hold the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, to account. Now, Douglas chairs the local criminal justice board. I sit on it. We both met the Director of Public Prosecutions down in Chelmsford a fortnight ago. She is well aware, ladies and gentlemen, we have got a jolly long way to go. The Home Secretary takes us extremely seriously. So all the pieces are being put in place, and now, of course, it is a time for us to deliver. So we need to configure and coordinate what we're doing. It's not a competition between voluntary sector bodies, public authorities. We've got to get a lot more common sense in there. And if that's a challenge, certainly for myself, we've got to get it better organised and coordinated, and that's certainly something we're on about. But if you have experience or know people who've got that, please let us know, get in touch with us so we can try and put that right. Was it a very, very quick comment? Because we do need to get on and let other people. Yeah.
What I've learned in the past 5 years, that an abused child either shuts down and withdraws in themselves, or becomes a delinquent.
Yeah. No, and these are things we are aware of and we need to deal with. So there's a lot of work going on, and we do need to continue that relentless drive for doing it. The piece of research that will be published probably around the end of the year on domestic abuse that was up here, and sexual offences and so on up here earlier, I think is likely to have some pretty hard-hitting comments about how the whole of the criminal justice system needs to change, including the court-based approach as well. But let's wait till we get that research. It won't be that long, and we will be there and it will be used. It's going to the HMIC as well as the government. Paul.
Just in relation to domestic violence in general, and crimes of that type, we recognise how serious those type of crimes are, and from a domestic violence point of view, the first time that someone contacts the police, the research tells us that's probably not the first time, not the second time. It could be a number of times previously they've been a victim of domestic abuse. So absolutely, when that person comes forward and reports it to us, it's absolutely vital that we provide the best possible service we can to them to get that support into them from an early perspective, that we can take action to try and deal with the perpetrator and put supporting action in place to the victim, because ultimately, by finally reporting things to the police, people are making a potentially life-changing decision in terms of their lifestyle, and we recognise that that's an incredibly difficult position to be in. And what we need to do is make sure that people have got the confidence to come forward in the first instance. And on a daily basis, we'll look at offences that have occurred, and I'll make sure that not only are we making, taking every effort to arrest the person responsible for it, but also that we've all got the right guidance and support into the victim as well, because that is really, really important. We don't want that person to be a victim of domestic violence or other types of crime again. So locally, it's really, really important that people feel they've got the confidence to come forward in the first place, and we'll make sure that we give them the best possible service. And the better joined up it can be across the entire process, from start to finish, then that can only be a good thing. But right from the get-go, please do contact us if you need to.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Let's move it over here.
Brian Seaver, Chairman, Neighbourhood Watch. I've heard recently about constabularies setting up a victims hub. I don't truly understand what that means, but I understand they've been quite successful in new ways of dealing with the victims of crime, etc. Is this something which Constabulary is considering? Does it ring a bell? Obviously not. Right.
It's news to me. News to Douglas.
What we have done is to centralise our victim care unit. So the syndrome that the MP talked about, that people could be handed from person to person and we drop the ball, cannot happen now. Once something goes into the court process, it's a single unit that deals with those issues, and therefore those people have always got that reference point. We don't call it a victims hub, we call it a victim care.
Right. I think this was a terminology I'd heard that some constabularies were trialling, as it were, and it was like a combining services, both citizen, voluntary and statutory bodies. Now, I may have got the wrong end of the stick, quite frankly, but it's something that seemed possibly feasible for Suffolk.
What I think you're probably referring to, Brian, is there is this initiative on a regional basis to put things together. I think Claire's been doing a lot of work, our Deputy Chief Executive. I'm somewhat sceptical that lumping all these things together with large amounts of public money is going to make any difference at all. What we do not need is a job's worth for the boys, or girls for that matter, and I'm sceptical that it'll work. We do have a pretty good system in Suffolk. Of course it can be improved, we know that. So that, I'm afraid, was a majority decision, but we do reserve the right, if it doesn't work, we will withdraw it and keep the resources here. But it has a chance, but I'm sceptical. I think that's the one that we're talking about. So, but thank you for raising it. The gentleman there, and then we'll come round to the back, Emma.
Oh, thank you. Yes, good evening. I'd just like to say a safety issue, really. Was coming back home from Great Yarmouth on Saturday night at about 9:30, and I was quite shocked, with winter coming, how many car lights are faulty. We was following one particular saloon with no lighting on the back, just his front lights, and the only time he put his brakes on at roundabouts, the only light that come on at the back was a strip light of red above the back window. No tail lights, no brake lights, just that strip of lights. Also on the front, when you're coming towards a vehicle, most of them these days seem to have got one light on, which is the one that's near the pavement. It's quite frightening to think sometimes you think it's a motorbike, and it probably isn't. It's probably wider than a motorbike. So that does worry me. We ought to have a blitz really in this area on lighting, front and back, to see that the cars are seen by pedestrians, by motorbikes. Let's get the cars lit up again, like they used to be where I come from in Devon. If a car was running around continuously without a light on, it was stopped. And I'm seeing the same car week in, week out, with the same headlight out, the same tail lights out. That does worry me a little bit in this region here. And then another thing is, the slow response concerned me about an incident on Friday dinner time at approximately 1 p.m, where I was down London Road South, and there was a road jutting off to Waterloo Road. And when we pulled up in the car, there was a young man being beaten up to a pulp. He was just walking down the pavement, minding his own business, and 3 men, quite big built, and one blonde-haired lady, come shooting out at him, grabbed him, slung him around in a circle, kicked him in the tummy, kicked him in the back, and then we got this young man. We brought him over to the other pavement out the way of this attack, and we stayed with him. We rang the police up. We couldn't believe it because several other people had already done it before we got there. We kept the young lad with us, but a blonde-haired lady come out of a building and come over again while we were there and beat him up again. And I rung 999, and 3 police cars come down London Road South from the top end, going down towards the lift-up bridge, one by one, 3 police cars, and we're still waiting for assistance. And then a police lady turned up 23 minutes after the attack started. That just shook me a little bit to think that was a little bit slow response, and me and my friend could have been in grave danger helping this young lad out to stop these 3 individuals and the lady from beating him to a pulp. We had to deal with it ourselves because there was nobody there for all that time until the police lady come and helped to sort it out. that just worried me just a little bit. That we might have had a little bit faster response on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure the issue about lighting on cars, it is an offence. I think I know that. I did my Institute of Advanced Motoring test earlier in the year. I had that drummed into me. And I suppose one has to be reasonable if a headlamp goes while you're driving. But nevertheless, this has come up elsewhere. So what's the answer to that then, Paul or Richard? Both of you.
I mean, with regards to
with regards to the cars and the lighting, obviously that is an ongoing issue. It's not just a Lowestoft thing or even a Suffolk thing. As you've rightly said, you're going to get that no matter where we police. I'd like to think we have got officers out and about. They are obviously stopping cars when they do see cars with no lights on or lighting problems. They do stop them. They do give them tickets. They do give them what's called VDRS notices and other schemes where we can get those cars repaired. Clearly, there's an awful lot of cars, so this isn't something we can fix overnight. I would just be reassured that we do still work on that. Likewise, if you see a car and you've got maybe a car index, that's a car registration number where you feel that car is acting in a dangerous manner, phone it in, and we can always go around and speak to that person and give them advice at a late date. Even if we can't stop that or be there for every single car and every single road junction. By all means, phone that one in. Just with regards to the second incident that you said, I would tend to agree with you. The scenarios you've just told to me is concerning. We usually try to respond to grade 1 events within a 20-minute or a 15-minute period. So, for you to have stood there for 25 minutes, and did you say that 3 police cars actually drove past the incident? Yeah.
And we was actually in
Right. Yeah, I know we are. Okay. I can't give you an exact rationale without looking at the event to try and work out what went wrong, if there is something. But clearly, I used to work in the control room. I've seen how events come in and how they get graded. The scenario that you're describing to me should ideally be graded as a grade A incident, and that would result in those officers being sent to it. I can't think of a scenario where officers would drive past one, especially 3 cars, to get to another
They probably hadn't got the
incident.
alert or something. They probably hadn't got the alert on the radios.
That would normally happen fairly quickly.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of off the top of my head is that there was a problem with the address or something else where those officers have gone past. But all I would say is obviously clearly you're a witness to probably what could be a fairly serious incident.
Yes.
Can I ask you just to stay behind afterwards, because I would like ideally just to make sure that we've got your details, and I'll check that event out for you, and I'll work out what's gone wrong, if anything's gone wrong.
Yes.
I'll find out for you.
It was just a bit of the frightening of the time, because it was going on. The fight was going on so long, and a lady and a gentleman in a pet shop down that road.
Yeah, I know we are.
They was there with a carpet man. There's like a carpet shop on the corner, and they was all there with us. And I said to him, "Can't you help us? Can't you come and help us as well?" And he said, "No, I'm not going to get involved in that." So just me and my friend was actually involved, and all the other people were just spectators.
That is concerning that you're saying that the officers never arrived quick enough. Just to reassure people, we do. As soon as a grade 1 or a grade A event comes into us, we aim to be there within that time period, and usually
it's quite scary.
I think the figures are we're aiming for a 90% hit rate on that, and we're usually pretty good. We are pretty good, and I'm clearly, if you're saying that this hasn't happened on that occasion, I'll be happy to dig through it and work out what went wrong if something did, and the reasons why.
The young lad was all right. His father actually come to take him away, and the police lady dealt with the people who was involved in the incident. And the lady actually dealt with that, and a policeman come along as well and backed her up. But it's just that distance. The distance. It was a bit scary because it only left me and my friend there to deal with the incident, and all these people were watching. They didn't want to get involved, and we were determined to. We were determined to save that young lad.
It sounds like you've done a really good job. As I say, I think the most important thing really is just stay behind afterwards. I'll just take a few details off you, and I'll make sure that somebody gives you a decent update as to what's happened and that you're involved.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Emma at the back. Just a clarification of what a Grade A incident is, very briefly before we move to the back, please.
We're talking about emergency incidents where there's a threat to someone's personal safety. A crime is occurring. It's a situation where someone would dial 999. It's very, very briefly, just in relation to what the gentleman's just said, I'd like to thank you for actually getting involved and calling us and trying to help people. That is what we want people to do. We want people to, from a civic perspective, to sort of know what their duty is to help other people. We don't want people to put themselves unnecessarily at risk, but we are very grateful when people actually come forward and tell us what's happened and actually try and help their fellow citizens. So thank you, and we will follow that up.
Okay. Around to the back, please, then we'll come back up here. Emma.
Hi, I'm Emma from Access Community Trust. I just wanted to make a suggestion, please. A couple of years ago, Suffolk Police had an excellent scheme with your cadets, whereby just before they graduated, they were able to come and work in some of our hostels and our frontline delivery services, where they worked with some of the most vulnerable, or the people that you will meet, street drinkers, perpetrators and victims of domestic violence, all of those people. And we had several cadets that came and worked with us for about 3 or 4 months before they graduated. And we got a lot from it, with the connection with the police, and certainly the cadets did too. Then it stopped because there wasn't any resources left for that. So can I just ask whether you could have another look at that? Because in terms of the cadets and the police knowing who our clients are, who we all know, it was an excellent scheme, and it would be really good if we could sort that again.
We'll definitely take that forward and see what we can do on that one. Thanks. The gentleman here, and then the gentleman there, and the gentleman there.
Thank you. Robin Small. The highway code I've always treated as a legal document, but unless it's enforced it no longer is a law, and driving is now getting so difficult with illegal parking, particularly on pavements and on corners, cutting corners, opposite junctions, and nothing is really done about it.
Okay, thanks. Heard that before, I think, Douglas. Parking, bad driving, and it is, you could almost argue it's a form of antisocial behaviour, of course. What more can we do about it, apart from educating people, etc.? What can we do from the constabulary point of view?
The highway code is a mixture of things. It will sometimes use the language that says you should. It will then use language that says you must. When it says must, it's referring to a piece of legislation which, if you contravene, you will be subject of enforcement. We spend quite a lot of time on this in a whole variety of ways. Sadly, this year we've had as many people killed on our roads in 8 months as we had in the whole of the previous year. And that's a very sad thing, because that's 26 people who will not continue with their lives. So nothing is more important. Sometimes it's a very minor thing that contributes towards those collisions. Sometimes it's something that is quite remarkable, most of us would avoid. In there is education and prevention. We've got very good schemes to divert drivers, and also to assist young people to have a much better understanding of the responsibilities as they start to take up driving habits. So it's not just about enforcement. And I think one of the things we're really proud of is the work that we do around education. So the work we do with BBC Radio Suffolk, for instance, around far better standards for motorcyclists. So that sort of thing does save lives. We've got colleagues who volunteer to run advanced riding courses, and people can come along for a mere £50. They get a day and a half's tuition on being a far better motorcyclist. So I think we're really going all out for this, because people literally die if we don't give them enough information and we haven't influenced their behaviour. But there's a lot that we as communities can just accept to be good standard, have patience, drive to the road conditions, drive to the speed limits, and frankly we'd all be a lot safer.
And on top of that, we do have a £180,000 fund that we're looking at the Road Safe Board as to how we can use it for various schemes. But of course that doesn't mean that enforcement is ignored either. I can assure you that it's a mixture. No. Okay. Well, we do have to try on that. Gentleman at the front, but thanks for raising that.
I'd like to say that I've lived in Lowestoft since 2008 on Victoria Road. Now down there, on a Friday and a Saturday nights, There's cars coming down there like a rat run. There's total disregards for speed, total disregards for helmets on bikes, wheelies down the middle of the road, cars being vandalised. My own car, which is a mobility car, has been hit on numerous occasions. I've even had a video of 3 people rip the wing mirror off. I've handed it to the police in Suffolk at the Lowestoft. Nothing ever came of it. Now then, I've not seen no speed cameras down there. I've seen no CCTV cameras, no radar guns, and there's hardly any PCSOs go down there. Don't you think it's about time something was done about it?
Direct operational issue. What do we think, Paul? Or Richard? So the gentleman's got an issue there. What can
in
we do
relation
about it?
to the video that you say concerning the damage, then again, come and see me afterwards. I'll get some details from you and I'll follow up what's happened in respect of that.
If you like to step outside, my latest new car, which I've only had a year, it's a Volkswagen. I had to pay £4,000 up front. That's been hit 4 times.
Yeah, and in relation to the issue about Victoria Road, and we can look at that in terms of whether there have been any particular issues from a speeding perspective, whether it becomes an area where we could do some particular speed enforcement.
It's horrendous down there.
We can look at that, and I'd encourage you. Thank you for coming again tonight, and we'll get those details, and we will have a look at that. In terms of a Friday, Saturday night, and vehicles driving down there, again, we can have a look at that. It's about trying to prioritise where our officers are going to be, certainly on a Friday and Saturday night as it gets busy.
It's not only the cars. I've had walls knocked over. Both my brick walls, which form the gateway, have been broken. And I cannot even drive my car across the road to back it in. They just won't let you stop. I have to leave my car on the side of the road till the night time, till all the traffic's gone, so I can get my car back in. You know.
I'll speak to you afterwards, and we'll speak to those directly.
Gentleman at the back there.
Hello there, Mr. Soames, Princes Road. We have exactly the same problem as this gentleman, but the opposite end of town, St Peter Street, Lowestoft. It runs parallel, if you like, north of Victoria Road. We've had 4 walls knocked down, a street lamp bent up recently. Yeah. If you're a resident in any of the roads leading on to St Peter Street, you can't get out because now people park on the double yellow lines on the corners, and you take your life in your hand trying to get out of places like Beresford Road, Boston Road, well not so much Boston Road, but Winnipeg Road, Princes Road, onto the main road. You have a bus stop outside the Tudor Rows. You have people parking on the path outside the Tudor Rows on a constant basis. We had a PCSO, Gary Matthews, who would regularly move these people on and give them a warning. Yep. Since you've moved him on, whoever moved him on, it's all back to normal again. The parking on the corners is, he really tended to get a grip of it.
I'll just add on that, Gary hasn't been moved on. He's still in that area.
Next ward.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, if that is a problem, and that's something I need to raise with Gary, I'll quite happily get him to come back and have another look at it. I know that, I think it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
You see Sarah, who took over from Gary. This
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Right.
Gary would walk around the area quite
Yeah.
late at night.
Yeah.
And he would find out who these cars belonged to, and he would knock on the door and just have a gentle word with them.
And get them shifted, yeah.
But that doesn't happen since Gary's moved to Dormiston.
Okay, well, leave it with me. I'll get somebody to have a look back down that road. Yeah, I mean, I do know about the problems that we have had down St Peter's Road. I'm aware there was a big accident where the car went through the front of the house and other bits and pieces. So yeah, we are mindful of the problems that are going on there. You know, that is something that maybe could do with some traffic calming measures as a permanent basis, because obviously sticking somebody down there with a speed gun once a week is not going to solve the problem. You know, we need to look at perhaps permanent problems with and solutions to that. It is, yeah. And what we
at the same time
Yeah, how we tend to deal with speeding, just to give you an insight into how we do this, we tend to do some study of the problems that are in that area first before we go jumping in with speed guns and giving people tons of tickets. So likewise with Victoria Road and your road, St Peter's Road, what we would tend to do then is to put the lines down if ever you see those that people drive over. That gives us figures, it gives us numbers to tell us when people are speeding, the times that they're speeding and how much they're speeding as well, and then we can target our enforcement to when the key problems are. Because obviously, clearly, I'm not going to make a promise to you now that I'm going to have somebody down there 24/7, because that won't happen. But once we've done that analysis, that then allows us to use our resources as best we can. So leave it with us. I can assure you. Yeah.
Your previous PCSO was.
He's great. I agree with you. He's a really good officer, and I'll make sure that somebody is doing what he wasn't doing if that's the case. We'll make sure that happens.
They ignore it anyway. I've got a white line outside my house.
Yeah.
I've got a truck curb. They park on there. The next door neighbour's a young lady.
Yeah.
She's got 2 young children. And there's no display at all on her if she parks on the other line 24/7.
Okay, well, likewise, I mean, as I say, I generally work, I've got a better knowledge of what's happening in North Lowestoft because that's my area, but I'm not making excuses. I'll speak to Inspector Barton, who covers South Lowestoft, and I will make sure that somebody has a look at Victoria Road and as to the problems that we've got on there. So leave it with us. We'll have a look at it.
The gentleman in the not in the front, but just in front of the previous gentleman.
Policing in regards to the finance of policing. A policeman normally starts, what, 23, 24-year-old when he starts on roughly. He then goes 30 years and he's 55. And what do? We put him out the grass. He's given a nice lump sum of money and a pension. Now we've got somebody very experienced, 30 years, and what do? We put them out the grass. Surely we can, everybody in the private industry now, we're having to look at 66, 67, 68. We're increasing the time when my lads who work for me have got to get a pension. I'm not getting at the policeman here, but I feel that that should come. I know it's a very question, rather a bit of a question about pension, especially in the civil service at the moment. But we put really experienced people out to grass at 55. Now, you get people like that lady with that problem she's got. She don't probably want to see a 32 or 3-year-old policeman. She'd like to see a more mature person with experience. I know you can't put 55 and 60-year-old policemen out down at the zoo and down in on board the wine bar to look after the drunks and that. But surely that the experience of somebody at 55 been in the police force all their years, why do we put them out to grass at 55?
I'm sure Douglas will have a comment on that. I think actually it might have been a little bit younger than that, because I think you can start earlier. But the system is being changed over the next few years. I entirely agree with you. Experience is important. I can see that. Clearly it's an operational issue. The wider questions about pensions affects the whole country. What is affordable, what is reasonable, what is fair, and it needs to be adjusted as we go forward. And there is some movement on that. And as you rightly say, it's not a question of looking at individuals, it's the system that needs to be developed.
If in the private industry, you've got everybody out the grass at 55, because this company that would be hemorrhaged through the cost of the pension. But that I know it's very controversial what I'm saying, and I'm not against the police, but that's the way I look at it. This country would be hemorrhaged if we had the same system. And we need the money. This country is, as you know, it's the miles of money in debt, and we cannot afford to give it away. We've got to, everybody's got to suffer, like the ordinary person. I'm not blaming the suffering. I think this is, and I say this is,
these gentlemen are looking at me because they are suffering.
I thought this would be rather a question.
Pensions we used to have are no longer affordable, and what is actually happening is the whole public sector and the pensions they have is being reformed. And there's quite a lot of anguish on that. And certainly when the proposals came forward 2 to 3 years ago, I did have a room full of police officers complaining about it. They are taking the pain like everyone else. With regard to being put out to grass, and it does give me a plug here, we've got Phil Aves here, who was the senior police officer in Lowestoft. He has not been put out to grass. He is now running Lowestoft Rising, which I think is a fairly innovative project. And the idea of it is to bring all the public sector and voluntary groups together to actually address them. Well, you can't. Yes. Yep. Pensions. The pensions have been. Oh yes. No, the pensions have been significantly reformed, and believe me, these. I had an awful lot of people beating a path to my door when the government did come forward with those proposals, like they have with the fire service, and MPs as well have had their pensions cut back significantly, and it's recognised that we're all having to sort of cut our cloth accordingly, and that is all been taken into account, I can assure you.
The thing is not, you put 66, 67, you put your government or anyone else, put it to 66, 67. Some of my lads looks like when they retire they'll be 68. But at the moment, nothing has been done at all. Don't get me wrong, I'm not getting against the police, they're doing a damn bloody good job, on excuse my language, and that. And if I was a policeman, I would probably say, well, I'm going to cut my pension, I'd be probably. But I think everybody has got to suffer, and I think, as I say, if we carried that system in the private industry, we would be, the company wouldn't be.
It is being reformed, I promise you.
I could add a very quick one to that, in that the pension scheme that we're on actually changes next year, 2015. That's Passmore to tell me I'm getting this wrong. I was due to retire at 55, so I would have been out eating grass. Unfortunately, I'm not now. I'm going to be eating grass at 61. So that system has changed, and it is changing. So a lot of the younger officers, or younger officers that we've got out there, will be adopting this new pension scheme, so they won't be disappearing after the 30 years straight away. You will find a lot of officers now will be staying on until they're 60. So.
What is the system then, if you then do 30 years, what happens then to the system in regards to how it
Let me just clarify for you. There used to be a 30-year pension, that's closed. It then became a 35-year pension. That's no longer in existence, because anyone with less than 15 years service in essence will be doing a 40-year pension. In practice, the difficulty for the organisation is that we could well be deploying people in public order situations who are in their late 50s. To do that, they have to pass an annual fitness test with a high degree of mobility, and it will be very difficult to keep many people at that level of fitness right up until the end of their service. That's something we're going to have to grapple with. Frankly, I do not have a range of roles now in the organisation where I can give people a 9-to-5 job in an office and keep them as police officers, because the organisation is so tight now that simply doesn't exist. So I think we'll get to the stage where people are failing the fitness test. We've got to make them exit the organisation, because physically they cannot do what a 25 or a 30-year-old did in the past. Tough situation, but the MP is correct. Pensions have been changed. That's the position that we're in now.
So what is the situation at the moment when a police officer takes on the job?
In essence, they're looking at a 40-year career. They'll be looking to do a 40-year stretch to be able to achieve their pension.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's I have exactly the same angst as you, and fitness test. This constabulary is working to improve that. You may have seen I've got a real thing about that. I do a lot of rugby refereeing. I'm 54, so one more year to go out the grass. But no, seriously, all these things are in the melting pot. The pension situation nationally is unaffordable, it is being addressed, and it needs to be done, and it's got to be fair and reasonable. So new people starting out will be working for 40 years, and I think that's perfectly right. Of course they should. Everybody else has to. but things change and it has to be done. Even if it's not terribly popular, that's just the way it is. Right, do we have any final questions? Or are we all dried up? So I didn't mean that in a rude way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. One thing I'd just like to finish with saying is, some of those questions that you've raised have been quite knotty, quite in your face, and that's exactly what these sessions are for. I've said to various people, we don't want people beating about the bush. You need to have the confidence to ask whatever you like, and the challenge now for all of us is to make sure they're followed up and dealt with to your satisfaction. And that is a big challenge. If you want to take my personal cards, they're on the desk out there. If you want to contact us at any time, that's absolutely fine. And I would just like to thank John, a volunteer at the back there, who has been filming this all for us. You might not have realised it. He's been round to all of our public meetings. He comes from Haverhill, so he couldn't have had much further to come. So thank you very much for that, John. And thanks, gents, for being on the panel and taking the questions. And thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, and the cadets, and Norman, and everybody else. Thank you very much indeed.